The lawyer cleared his throat. My son smirked. And then he said it loud enough for everyone to hear. He gets 0. No hesitation, no shame, just confidence. $167 million, and according to my own son, I wasn't worth a single dollar. People looked at me like I was already finished, like I was invisible. But then the lawyer stopped him, raised one finger, and said 6 words that made my son's face drain of color. That's not what the will says. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you're listening from, because this story proves something important. Sometimes the people who betray you do it too early. My name is Walter Hargreaves. I'm 68 years old and I live in Savannah, Georgia. I buried my wife of 43 years 3 weeks before that meeting, and I walked into that lawyer's office thinking I was about to lose everything. I had no idea my son was about to lose far more than money. I could still smell the flowers from the funeral on my jacket. Lilies, too many lilies. They clung to me as I sat in the leather chair across from my son, inside a lawyer's office that felt colder than the grave I'd stood beside 3 weeks earlier. My son didn't look at me, not once. He sat upright, hands folded, jaw tight, not grieving, not tired, not broken. Prepared. That was the first thing that scared me. The lawyer adjusted his glasses and opened a thick folder. "Thank you all for coming," he said. "This is the reading of Margaret Hargreaves' estate." My wife's name. Hearing it made my chest tight. 43 years of marriage. 43 years of shared mornings, arguments, forgiveness, silence, laughter. And now everything she left behind was being reduced to paper and signatures. The lawyer cleared his throat. Total estate value after taxes and liabilities, he paused. Approximately $167 million. The room shifted. Someone inhaled sharply. I didn't. The number didn't matter to me. What mattered was my wife was gone. My son finally leaned back in his chair. That smug, rehearsed calm returned to his face, as if this meeting wasn't about grief but victory. The lawyer continued listing properties, accounts, trusts. I barely heard him. My mind was still stuck on one thought. Why hadn't my son checked on me once since the funeral? No calls, no visits, no "Dad, are you okay?" Just silence. Then the lawyer looked up. "And now," he said, "we'll discuss distribution." My son straightened. This was his moment. The lawyer hadn't even finished his sentence when my son spoke over him. "Let us be clear," he said flatly. "My father receives nothing." The words landed hard, not dramatic, not emotional, cold, final, like a door slamming shut. I felt every pair of eyes in the room turn toward me. Pity, awkwardness, judgment. I didn't speak, didn't ask why. Because in that moment, I realized something worse than losing money. My son had already decided I was no longer part of his life. The lawyer blinked. "I'm sorry," he said. My son smiled thinly. "My mother made her wishes very clear," he said. "He gets 0, 0, after decades of marriage, after caregiving through chemo, after sleeping on hospital chairs, after feeding her when she was too weak to lift a fork. 0. I felt my throat tight, but I still said nothing. The lawyer hesitated. "Before we continue," he said carefully, "I'd like to clarify." "There's nothing to clarify," my son snapped. "She told me herself." That was when I looked at him, really looked, and saw something I hadn't noticed before. Not grief, not pain, hunger. The lawyer slowly raised a hand. "Mr. Hargreaves," he said, "I need you to understand, verbal conversations do not override written documents." My son's smile faltered just slightly. The lawyer turned the folder toward himself. "And according to the signed will," he paused, "your statement is inaccurate." The room froze. My son's jaw tightened. "What?" he said. The lawyer adjusted his glasses again. "The will does not state that your father receives nothing." Silence, thick, heavy. My son laughed once, a short, dismissive sound. "That's impossible." The lawyer didn't respond. He flipped a page. "Your mother amended her will 18 months ago," he said calmly. "After her diagnosis." My heart skipped. "She never told me that." My son leaned forward. "She wouldn't do that without telling me." The lawyer finally looked directly at him. "She didn't." Then he looked at me. "She told your father." My son turned toward me slowly, eyes narrowing. "What is he talking about?" I swallowed. Because in that moment I remembered something, a late night. My wife sitting at the kitchen table, hands shaking, papers spread out. She had asked me one question. "Walter, if something happens to me, will you be strong enough to let the truth come out?" I thought she was talking about her illness. I was wrong. The lawyer continued. The will includes a sealed provision, he said, one that activates only under specific conditions. My son's voice sharpened. What conditions? The lawyer didn't answer immediately. He reached into the folder and removed a smaller envelope, unmarked, unopened. This, he said, is not for general distribution. He looked directly at my son. It is triggered only if an attempt is made to disinherit the surviving spouse. The color drained from my son's face. What are you saying? The lawyer's voice remained calm. I'm saying your mother anticipated this moment. My pulse thundered in my ears. The lawyer turned to me. Mr. Hargreaves, did your wife ever express concerns about your son's intentions? I hesitated, then nodded slowly. She said he was becoming someone she didn't recognize. My son stood up abruptly. That's not true, he shouted. She was confused near the end. She was not confused, the lawyer cut in. She was precise. He placed the sealed envelope on the table. This provision activates now. My son slammed his hand down. You can't just, I can, the lawyer said evenly. And I am. The envelope was opened. The paper inside was thick, official. The lawyer read aloud. If my son attempts to exclude my husband from my estate, then all controlling interests, voting rights, and liquid assets are to be transferred immediately to my husband and placed in a trust he controls alone. My son staggered back. That's not real, the lawyer continued. My son will retain only the residence he currently occupies and a fixed stipend contingent upon his cooperation. Cooperation. My son's eyes snapped to me. What did you do? He hissed. I stood up slowly, hands shaking, heart breaking. I didn't do anything, I said quietly. She did. The lawyer looked at my son one final time. Your attempt to disinherit your father has now legally disinherited you from control. The room erupted. My son shouted, cursed, accused, but I couldn't hear him anymore. Because one thought rang louder than everything else. My wife knew. She knew who he had become, and she trusted me to survive what came next. As security escorted my son out of the room, he turned back one last time, eyes burning. This isn't over, he said, and I believed him, because the will didn't just give me money. It gave me something far more dangerous, the truth. And I was about to learn why my wife waited until death to reveal it. The lawyer's office emptied quickly after that, too quickly. People don't like staying in rooms where family masks come off. I remained seated, staring at the table where the envelope had been opened, my hands numb, my ears still ringing from my son's voice echoing in my head. This isn't over. The lawyer closed the folder carefully. Mr. Hargreaves, he said quietly, there are things you need to know now, things your wife insisted we delay until this moment. I looked up. What things? He hesitated. Then said the sentence that shifted everything. Your wife believed your son was already moving money before she died. My heart skipped. Moving money how? He slid a tablet across the table. Shell accounts, quiet transfers, amounts just small enough to avoid triggering alerts. I stared at the screen. Numbers, dates, familiar account names. My wife's handwriting annotated in the margins of scanned documents. She had been tracking him. She noticed irregularities 18 months ago, the lawyer continued. At first she thought it was an error, then she realized it was intentional. I swallowed hard. She never told me. She was afraid, he said. Not of him, but of what would happen to you if she did. I closed my eyes. Margaret always protected me, even when it hurt her. Your son believed, the lawyer continued, that once she passed, he could finalize the transfers and present a version of the will that left you dependent. Dependent, weak, disposable. That sealed clause, the lawyer said, was her counterstrike. I felt my chest tighten. Then why wait? I asked. Why not confront him while she was alive? The lawyer didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into his briefcase and removed a second envelope, thicker than the first, red stamp across the front, open only after the will is contested. My hands trembled. He's going to contest it, isn't he? I asked. The lawyer nodded. Already called his attorneys. Of course he had. Before you read this, the lawyer said, I need to ask you something personal. I nodded slowly. Did your son ever pressure you to sign documents on your wife's behalf? The question hit like a hammer. Memories rushed back. Late nights. Papers slid across the table. Just formalities, Dad. Mom asked me to help. I swallowed. Yes, I said, twice. The lawyer exhaled sharply. That confirms it. He opened the second envelope. Inside were copies of emails, text messages, voicemails, all from my son, all timestamped during my wife's final months. I read the first message. Mom's confused again. Let me handle the paperwork. The second, Dad doesn't need to know the numbers. It'll just stress him. The third made my hands shake. Once she's gone, everything gets simpler. I felt something break inside me, not anger, grief. This wasn't a moment of betrayal. It was a pattern. The lawyer's voice dropped. There's more. He played a voicemail. My son's voice filled the room, casual, confident. Just make sure the old man signs it. He trusts me. The lawyer stopped the recording. That voicemail, he said, is why your wife changed the will. Tears blurred my vision. She knew, I whispered. She knew, he confirmed. And she was terrified you'd be blamed for what she uncovered. I wiped my face slowly. What happens now? The lawyer straightened. Now your son will try to paint you as unfit, mentally unstable, manipulated. My stomach dropped. He's going to claim I don't know what I'm doing. Yes, the lawyer said, and he'll try to freeze your access to the trust. I felt my pulse quicken. Can he? Only if you let him. I stood up. I won't. The lawyer nodded. Good, because there's one final thing. He leaned forward. Your wife left instructions not just about money, but about evidence. He slid a flash drive toward me. This contains a recorded conversation between your wife and your son. My breath caught. When was this recorded? I asked. 2 weeks before she died. I stared at the flash drive like it was radioactive. She hid it inside a cookbook, the lawyer said softly. One she knew your son would never touch, my wife's cookbook, the one she guarded like a secret diary. She wanted you to decide when the truth came out, he added. My hands closed around the drive. What's on it? I asked. The lawyer met my eyes. Proof. I left the office shaking. Outside, the sun felt wrong, too bright, too normal. My phone buzzed. A text from my son. You think you've won. You have no idea what you just started. Another followed. If you play that recording, you'll destroy this family. I stopped walking, stared at the screen, then typed back 3 words. You already did. I drove home and locked the door behind me. The house felt different now, like it knew. I plugged the flash drive into my laptop. My finger hovered over the file. The name was simple. Final conversation. I hesitated. Once I played it, there would be no going back. My wife's voice would come back to life. My son's mask would fall, and everything, money, family, legacy, would change forever. I pressed play. My wife's voice filled the room, weak but clear, and then my son spoke, calm, cold, and what he said next made my blood run ice cold, because he wasn't just planning theft, he was planning something worse. Something permanent. My wife's voice came through the speakers first, weak, tired, but unmistakably hers. Walter doesn't know yet, she said softly, and I don't want him to, not until you show me who you really are. My chest tightened. I hadn't heard her voice in weeks. Then my son spoke, calm, too calm. Mom, you're making this harder than it needs to be. The lawyer had been right. This wasn't grief. This was strategy. My wife coughed lightly. You're moving money without telling me, she said. Why? There was a pause. Then a sigh because Dad would panic, my son replied. And honestly, he doesn't need to know everything. My hands curled into fists. My wife's voice sharpened. It's my estate. Another pause. Then my son said something that made my stomach drop. Not for long. Silence. Even the hum of my laptop seemed too loud. What did you say? My wife asked. He laughed quietly. I'm saying once things settle, you won't have to worry about it. My wife inhaled sharply. That sounds like a threat. No, he said calmly. It's a plan. I felt sick. My wife's voice trembled. You're talking about your father. I'm talking about efficiency, my son replied. He's emotional, he's slow, and when you're gone, he'll only complicate things. Gone, the word echoed in my head. My wife didn't speak for a moment, then she said something that broke me. I raised you better than this. His response was instant. You raised me to win. I slammed my hand on the desk. The recording continued. I've already spoken to people, my son said. Accountants, attorneys, doctors. My breath caught. Doctors, my wife asked. About Dad, he replied casually. Just in case. My vision blurred. Just in case of what? My wife demanded. Another pause, longer this time. Then my son said the sentence that made my hands start shaking uncontrollably. Just in case we need to establish that he's not competent. I ripped my headphones off. My heart pounded so hard I thought I might pass out. He was planning to declare me unfit, not after her death, before. That was why he wanted control. Why he wanted me isolated. Why he wanted the narrative set. The recording continued without mercy. My wife's voice was steadier now, controlled. "Is that why you've been pushing him to sign papers?" she asked. "Yes," my son replied. "Once he signs, it's clean." "And if he does?" she asked. My son exhaled slowly. "Then I'll make sure people believe he doesn't know what he's signing." I stood up so fast my chair fell backward. The room spun. This wasn't about money. This was about erasing me. The recording ended there. No shouting, no confrontation, just silence. The kind that follows when someone shows you exactly who they are. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. My son's voice came through, calm as ever. "Dad," he said, "I know you've been talking to the lawyer." I didn't respond. He continued, "You need to stop. This is going to get ugly." I laughed once, a broken sound. "You planned this," I said quietly. "You planned to take everything, even my voice." He didn't deny it. "Dad," he said almost gently, "you're tired, you're grieving, let me handle things." "Like you handled Mom?" I asked. Silence. Then his voice hardened. "If you release that recording," he said, "I will destroy what's left of this family." I felt something settle inside me. A calm I hadn't felt in weeks. "You already destroyed it," I said, "but you made one mistake." "And what's that?" he snapped. "You forgot," I said slowly, "that your mother trusted me more than she feared you." I hung up. My phone buzzed immediately. Threats, accusations, guilt. I ignored them all. Instead, I called the lawyer. "I want to move forward," I said. "With what?" he asked. "With everything." There was a pause. Then, "Are you sure?" I looked at the screen of my laptop. At my wife's voice frozen in time, at the truth my son thought would die with her. "I'm done protecting him," I said. The lawyer exhaled slowly. "Then we proceed." "What happens next?" I asked. "Next," he said, "we put this in front of a judge." My phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from my son, short, cold. "If you do this, I will make sure you lose more than money." I stared at it, then typed my reply. "Then you should have been a better son." I sent it. And as I set my phone down, I realized something chilling. My son hadn't been surprised by the will. He had been surprised that he failed. And men like him don't accept failure quietly, which meant Act 4 wasn't about inheritance anymore. It was about survival. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound outside my house felt louder than it should have been. A car slowing down, footsteps on gravel, my phone lighting up on the nightstand. I kept replaying the recording in my head, my son's voice calm and calculating, talking about doctors, about competency, about me like I was already gone. By morning, I understood something clearly. If I hesitated now, he would finish what he started. I dressed slowly, carefully. Like a man preparing for a long day in court or a war. The lawyer met me at his office before noon. He listened to the recording in silence, his jaw tightening with every sentence. When it ended, he didn't speak right away. Then he said quietly, "This changes everything." I nodded. "I want it all documented, filed today." He looked at me carefully. "You know what happens once we do this," he said. "There's no going back. Your son will be investigated." I didn't flinch. "He should be," I replied. The paperwork moved fast after that. Emergency injunctions, asset freezes, a petition for an independent mental competency review of my son, not me. That part felt almost poetic. By evening, the courthouse had copies of everything. And by nightfall, my son knew. He didn't call this time. He showed up. I was sitting at my kitchen table when headlights washed across the window. A knock followed, hard, angry. I stood, heart pounding, and opened the door. My son stood there alone. No confidence this time, no smug smile, just fury. "You humiliated me," he said. I stepped aside. "Come in," I replied calmly. That alone rattled him. He walked in, pacing like a caged animal. "You had no right," he snapped. "No right to air private conversations. You had no right to plan my erasure," I said. He stopped. "You're exaggerating." I laughed, a dry, exhausted sound. "You talked about doctors," I said. "You talked about signing papers behind my back. You talked about making me look incompetent." He clenched his fists. "I was protecting the family." "No," I said quietly. "You were protecting control." Silence stretched between us. Then his voice dropped. "You don't understand how this works anymore," he said. "The money, the structures, the influence." I looked at him, really looked. At the boy who once cried when his bike tipped over. At the man who now thought power made him untouchable. "You think money made you strong," I said. But it just made you reckless. His eyes narrowed. You think a judge will side with you, he scoffed. A grieving old man, I leaned forward. I think the recording will, I said. That's when his confidence finally cracked, just slightly. You wouldn't play it, he said. You wouldn't destroy your own son. I felt something heavy loosen in my chest. I'm not destroying you, I replied. I'm stopping you. He stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. You chose her over me, he said bitterly. I shook my head. No, I said. She chose the truth over your lies. His phone buzzed. He checked it. And I watched the color drain from his face. What is it? I asked. He swallowed. They froze the accounts, he muttered. All of them. Yes, I said. They did. Another buzz. His hands started shaking. They're appointing an independent trustee, he whispered. I don't have authority anymore. I stood. This is what accountability feels like, I said. He looked up, eyes burning. You think this makes you a hero? No, I replied. It makes me a survivor. He laughed bitterly. You'll die alone, he said. You know that, right? That one hurt. I won't pretend it didn't, but I answered anyway. I'd rather be alone, I said, than live under the shadow of someone who wanted me erased. He stood there for a long moment, then quietly, you always loved Mom more. I closed my eyes. Yes, I said, and she loved you enough to stop you. He turned toward the door. At the threshold, he stopped. This isn't over, he said. I met his gaze. It is for me. He left without another word. The door closed, and for the first time in weeks I could breathe. The court proceedings lasted months. The recording changed everything. Doctors testified not about my incompetence, but about my son's manipulative planning. The judge listened carefully. When the ruling came, it was clear and devastating. My son lost all fiduciary control. His stipend was reduced and supervised. Any attempt to interfere again would result in criminal charges. He didn't speak to me after that, not once. People ask if that hurts. Of course it does, but grief doesn't mean surrender. A year later, I sat alone in my living room opening a letter addressed in my wife's handwriting. I hadn't opened it before. Inside, she'd written, "If you're reading this, it means you were stronger than I feared and braver than I hoped. I'm sorry I made you wait for the truth, but I needed you protected, not pitied. Love isn't blind, Walter. It's careful. And I trust you to finish what I started." I folded the letter slowly. Tears came not from loss this time, but from relief, because she was right. Some people think inheritance stories are about money. They're not. They're about who you trust when you're no longer here to defend yourself. My son thought death would make him powerful. He was wrong. It made the truth louder. And as I locked the door that night, standing alone in the quiet house, I realized something simple and final. Being written out of someone's life is painful, but being erased is unforgivable, and I refused to let that happen.